Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Saturday Morning Gaming Show. It is March 19th, 2020, and I am your co-host, the Fat Wizard, joined today by...
Alamaxia.
And Lobos.
Today we're playing Heretic for the PC. This was released in 1994, and it's very much a Doom... I don't want to say Doom clone, because I think that's kind of a... that gets thrown around a lot, but I really think that this game is a Doom clone.
Well, it's
I
on
don't
the
know.
Doom engine, so
Yeah.
it's basically Doom, but high fantasy. Lots of different demons. The weapons are very fantasy-like. I like the weapon choices in this.
Yeah, and I think some of the weapons do feel like Doom weapons, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's go over a little bit about, Alamaxia, you talked about this game's more like a fantasy version of Doom, where Doom was more of a sci-fi thing. So either Lobos or Alamaxia, you want to kind of talk about the art style here, set the scene of what Heretic is?
Go for it, Lobos.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like we said, it's dark fantasy. A lot of the interiors are like castles, and then outside's kind of courtyards and kind of stuff. But the sort of enemies are kind of demons, but not necessarily. There's like gargoyle enemies, and I don't know what these big buff guys are. They just
I think they're either zombies or like
golems.
stone golems.
yeah, kind of golems, and then you got like the kind of snake dudes that just run after you with like scythe hands and kind of. But it keeps it more fantasy than necessarily like everybody's a demon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you have these candelabras, like these sconces that have these snakes coiled up around the center of them, so it really sets like that dark fantasy style where everything's like skulls. There's a lot of golden
everywhere.
skulls.
Yeah, in a way that, unlike Doom, right? Doom didn't have any skulls, right?
Nah,
No, not at all.
It's very like 90s metal, I think, in this scene here. So the game is divided up into technically five episodes, although this game was released in the same way that Doom was. So if you folks remember how Doom was released, the first episode was free. Actually, I don't know if the first episode in Heretic was free, but it was a shareware game. So you'd send money, personal check into the company, and they would send you your 3 episodes of Heretic. And each of the episodes has, I think, like 7 or 8 missions, and then they have all one secret mission. I think I actually found one secret mission. But once the game came out as a retail game, they actually introduced 2 more levels. But they don't really do too much about it. So we're going to spend the majority of the podcast talking about the first 3 episodes, and then we have a little bit of time for the last 2 episodes, but there's not a whole lot in there. So I think we can do a good job covering the first 3 episodes here. So the first episode here is called, I'm going to pull up my list here. It is called City of the Damned. And so the first mission there is you're in the docks, and immediately there's enemies that are just coming at you, those gargoyles that you're talking about, Lobos, right?
Yep.
They're these red little, I guess they're more like imps, not so much gargoyles,
Sure.
but red little imps that fly at you. And the first weapon you get is a wand. I think it's a wand of some sort.
It's like Mystic Wand or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's an instant shot. It's basically a pistol for the sakes of things. I mean, a lot of these you can just kind of parallel directly to Doom. But you start with the Mystic Wand, if that's what it's called, and the ammo is like these just little yellow orbs on the ground. But also, you start off with a melee, which is just like this stick. I don't know if you guys use this stick.
It's terrible.
The animation that you just kind of jab. You're like,
Yeah, but the thing is, I always felt that the ring in... I don't know if it's a ring or the fists or what you want to call it weapon in Doom. I always felt like that was worthless too. So, yeah, I think it makes sense that the staff is equally useless in this game.
But there was another melee weapon.
Yes.
There is, yeah. And we get that a little bit later. It's these gauntlets that shoot It's essentially like your Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, right? You just shoot these green bolts of electricity.
Yeah.
And that's also a terrible weapon.
Oh, no, that weapon is great.
I think it looks cool, and it functions pretty much like the chainsaw from Doom, such that you run up to enemies, and it even kind of, you bump up against them in a weird way, and kind of the camera shakes around like while you're electrifying them.
Yeah.
It's there as a last resort, as any of the melee weapons are.
I really liked it whenever a lot of imps were around me, because I could pull that out and it would just draw me into one, and that one's down, that one's down. I just could walk through them and not have to waste any ammo.
All right, so I don't want to spoil it yet, but did either of you figure out how to make that weapon incredible?
Yes.
No. Oh, well, I can guess, but I didn't try it.
Okay, go ahead and guess.
Well, I was guessing with the tome.
Yes. Do you know what the tome does?
Yes.
Or could you guess what the tome does? With the gauntlet specifically.
Does it give you range?
No, it gives you something though.
Oh, what does it do?
It gives you health back.
Lifesteal. Nice.
Lifesteal, and that's amazing, especially, and we're jumping ahead of ourselves, but since we're on the topic, there's these minotaurs that are very difficult later on, and you can basically out damage and out lifesteal them. And so you basically pop your tomb, go up there with your gauntlets, and you just hold down the mouse button. And I was playing on the normal difficulty, so there's 5 difficulties. And I was playing on difficulty 3. So that strategy may not work on difficulties 4 and 5. But yeah, for difficulty 3, which the difficulties are kind of funny in how they're named.
Yeah.
I think like the difficulty 3 is like bringeth thou on or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the different difficulties are, the first one is thou needeth a wet nurse. And then,
and the wet nurse, that was from Wolfenstein, right?
Oh, was it?
I thought that the first difficulty in Wolfenstein was something about a wet nurse, but I could be misremembering. Anyway, go ahead.
And then the second one is Yellow Bellies Are Us. And then the normal difficulty is Bringest Them On. The fourth one, Thou Art a Smite Meister.
Oh my gosh.
And fifth one, Black Plague Possesses Thee. And the fifth difficulty has some extra special modifiers, because what I found between the other ones is they normally just kind of up the number of monsters a little bit. Maybe you do a little less damage, or the number of power-ups on the field are decreased. But no, skill difficulty 5, ammo power-ups give 50% more than normal, because monsters will attack and move 300% faster, and enemy missiles will fly 300% faster. So if you thought things were coming at you fast at the end of Act 3, ooh.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and also I read that you can't use cheat codes at all in that difficulty.
Yeah, they lock those out.
I think that's cool. That is cool. I can appreciate when developers are just like, no, this is very difficult. And it almost makes me want to see a speed run of the hardest difficulty here. So let's talk a little bit about some more of the weapons here. So one of the weapons I have right here is a crossbow. And this is literally a shotgun. It feels like a shotgun, and it's one of those where it's almost like, well, when you fire it, there's 3 or 4 orbs that come out, and if you're close enough to an enemy, they'll all hit the enemy, but sometimes they spread out such that you're not hitting them all. But yeah, it really felt like a crossbow. It really felt like a shotgun to me. Yeah. And it was probably my favorite weapon.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
I liked it a lot. What I think it deals more damage the closer you are too, because some enemies, I would kill them in one hit if I was right next to them, but not far away. But the projectiles do travel pretty much across, as far as you can shoot. And there's 3 projectiles, and the middle one is yellow, and I think that one deals more damage than the other 2. I think that's like the main
I definitely
shot.
felt like it dealt more damage.
Yeah, that's what I felt. But yeah, I love this weapon too. It was powerful, especially compared to the first weapon. And if I ever was like low on ammo on it, I would use other stuff. But I was sad too,
It was really slow. Like the projectiles themselves were really slow though. So if there was an enemy that was kind of across a chasm or across the room from me, I would usually just kind of pocket that one and pull out, like we were talking about, the wand you start out with, because it has the projectile go instantly across the screen.
Yeah. Although that one's accuracy does go pretty far down when it's far away. At least that's what I perceived. Also, if you use I forget what it's exactly called, like Tome of Dark Power or something like that. There's a bunch of items you can pick up and save and then use them later. Kind of like Duke Nukem when we were talking earlier, but Doom didn't have these, right?
Yeah. No, the only thing that they had was a berserk orb or a berserk thing that you could use.
Yeah.
Or pick up.
Yeah, you just pick it up.
And of course,
though.
health packs. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I read somewhere that this
inventory.
was actually one of the first first-person shooters to have an inventory management system.
Oh.
Yeah, and it certainly shows, because trying to use items was a nightmare. Because, all right, so to use an item, you have a little slot at the bottom of your UI that shows you the item that is active or is selected. And then you can press the enter key to utilize the item. And I think you could rebind it, but I never did. But often it's like you never have the item you really want. So you have to mash on the bracket keys. So like the left and the right bracket will scroll across. And then you're like, all right, you found the item you want. You hit the enter button to select it, and then you have to mash on the enter button again to actually use it. And by the time that happens, you're already dead. So there's probably some better ways than using the enter button, but I didn't really explore any options. While we're talking about controls, I would love to chat about the default control scheme, because I played the first 3 levels with the default control scheme, and I was like, whoo, this is going to be a long game. So the way that it starts, now it's worth noting that we were all playing the version on Steam that just uses DOSBox. So I'm not sure if this was the original control scheme, but this was how it was presented in that piece of software. You would use the WASD. No, you would not have the WASD keys. What you had was just a mouse control. And so you would move the mouse forward to run forward, back to run back, left to turn left, and then right to turn right. Now, if you wanted to strafe, you would hold the right mouse button and then move the mouse. And so you'd strafe left and right. And so I played the first 3 levels with that, and it was very, very difficult. And it reminded me of old PC games like this that a lot of people had trackpads. And so that might have made sense back there, because they would, or not trackpad, track balls.
Yeah.
And so they would have like a little spinny ball, and then that would make sense in this. Although if I remember right, and maybe Alamaxia, you can correct me, I think the default control scheme also allowed you to use the arrow keys to go up and down. Do you know that for sure, Alamaxia?
I believe with the default control scheme, you could use the arrow keys to actually move your character around, but I think as page up, page down, you could actually look up and down.
Right.
Oh, see, I never knew that. I never looked up and down. Oh, well, that's really interesting. So,
but the way the game aims is all you have to do is get your horizontal set correctly, which I found to be kind of nice for some of it, just because of how chaotic the screen would get. But then during that chaos, I'd be like, well, I just want to hit this enemy that's on the ground in front of me, but I'd be shooting the imp up in the air 500 feet behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did become troublesome when you would try to shoot. So sometimes there'd be enemies that are floating above you, and you were trying to lead the target and shoot them, but because the bullet wasn't going to hit it, it didn't actually shoot in the air.
Yeah.
And then so you're like, all right, cool, I'm going to aim at the thing, and so it shoots in the air, but then the thing moves, and you're like, I can't win here. And that was particularly difficult with things like rocket launchers. Now, we just completed the very first mission here. With the very first episode. And so I want to talk a little bit about the story of this. They don't really explain it super well. I mean, it's a Doom game. You just go around and kill stuff. But there is a little bit of a story. So it's basically there's 3 brothers. They're the Serpent Riders. And their name is... Despiral is one of them, Korax is another, and Eidolon is another one of them. And so they are basically using, I think they're wizards, and they're using their magic to possess the kingdom and turning all the people there into enemies, or corrupting the armies, right?
Mm.
And so I think as a heretic, because I believe, yes, you are actually a heretic in the game, and I don't know why they chose that word. I think when you're thinking about heresy, you would expect there to be some sort of religious backtone or backdrop to it.
Well, perhaps the wizards have control, and so everybody has to obey them, and by him going and against what they want, he's committing heresy. So
I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that much of the levels themselves have almost like a religious element to them, because some of the levels we saw in the City of the Damned, you're going through a cathedral.
Yep.
We went through a graveyard, and so I think there's a little bit of that. Maybe it's only because you're supposed to be exploring a city. When you complete a mission, you see a city map. And it shows, it'll say like episode 1, the dock's done. Now entering episode 2, the dungeons or the gatehouse or the guard tower. And so I liked that because it gave you a sense of presence in the levels and you get a sense of progression, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you missed in Doom. Doom was just, you're just running through the levels, shooting everything. But having a map there, I think does a better job of like making this place feel real. If that makes sense.
Well, they did have a map in Doom, and they would...
Wait, what?
Yeah, you would have locations that you would go, and it would say, you are here. But it would be like, you'd be on Phobos or something like that, and then you'd be like military outposts or something like that.
But did they have it over and over? Oh, wait, yes, they did.
It's
I
just
completely
in
forgot
between.
about that.
Yeah. But it's more relatable kind of here, since it's on a planet. I don't know, it's not even necessarily Earth, but whatever.
Yeah, and it starts actually getting weird after we're on the second episode, which is Hell's Maw. And at the end of this one, it starts getting a little bit weirder in the story.
Sure.
With some domes that we see. But yeah, after you complete an episode, it has a very, very long screen of just text. Absolutely no fanfare. It's like, good job. I think actually at the end of the last mission here, you fight a Minotaur. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's called a Maulotaur.
Maulotaur. Okay.
The first episode's boss is the giant skull enemy, which I don't know their
names.
Oh,
that's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the skull here. So the first time that you encounter this skull, it's the boss of episode 1.
I learned these are called Iron Wraiths.
Iron Wraith.
Okay.
Ooh.
And so he's a giant head. I'd say he's roughly 2 times the size of the player character. Mm-hmm. And there's 3 attacks. And really only one of them matters. Yeah. So one of the attacks is they shoot a blue ball at you, and that damages you pretty bad. Another one is this big wall of fire. That if that hits you, you're probably dead. But both of those are pretty easy to dodge. The one that you have to look out for and is super annoying is it's this whirlwind one.
Oh, the tornado.
And this whirlwind attacks. It's like a persistent effect that goes around and follows you. And if you get caught in it, it starts levitating you and spinning you around. And as you can imagine, if you're trying to shoot it with a rocket launcher, you're apt to shoot a wall as you're spinning around and thus blowing yourself up.
Yeah. It also does a lot of damage too, like over time while you're stuck in it. And then he's shooting more stuff at you. It's just a mess.
And it can it'll persist even though the Iron Wraith has been destroyed. So it's just it's such an annoying attack. And later on in the game, they start including the Iron Wraith in more enclosed spaces, so it's just like, I can't even run away, and multiple of them.
Yeah, there's the one level where you're like, good, I reached the end of the level. You open the room that has like the end teleporter, and there's one of those, and you're like,
Yeah. Now we're about midway through episode 2 right now, and we're in the ice. Let me look up the level name here because it's actually really cool. It is the Ice Grotto. And the way that the episode 2 is set up is really cool because it starts out as a progression, and you first go into the crater because you're kind of like ascending a volcano. And so you first do a crater, and then mission 2 is the lava pits. episode 3 is the River of Fire, and then you're like, oh, I'm so sick of fire, and then they throw you a curveball. Mission 4 is the Ice Grotto, and now instead of being damaged as you're walking around, walking on the lava, you're now kind of sliding a little bit on ice. And actually, I think that this was the first game on the id Tech here that had the ability to sort of influence the player character with momentum. And so we see that, like, if you're walking on water, it actually kind of pushes you back.
Yeah.
Same thing with ice and with the tornado thing. And in fact, one of the other later levels actually has a very large gust of air that will try to push you off a bridge.
Yeah, that was cool.
And so, there's a bunch of different areas that they kind of play around with that technology here. I guess, we just finished the catacombs. Okay, we're really trucking along here then. And so, again, each of these episodes has a secret level. And, again, I only found a secret level on one. Did you guys find any secret levels?
I don't know.
Find any.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either I didn't, or it wasn't obvious to me that there were that it was a secret level.
Yeah. It isn't obvious until you'd have to look at a walkthrough to say, like, oh, this one's a secret one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's the thing that's really weird, and I don't know if this was a bug or this is intentional, but when you complete a mission, you can only carry one of each of the items onto the next level.
Right.
So let's say that you have one of the things that you can carry is these quartz flasks, and those quartz flasks will heal you up for like 20, 25, right?
Yeah.
And so one might say, oh, I'm just going to hoard all these until the last level and then just stomp through the boss fight. But no, it only allows you to carry one over from level to level. And so often what I would do is near the end of the level, just kind of use any of the items.
Yeah, I started doing that as well. I imagine it's just for balance, because you could be at the end and have 20 of these dark tomes and 100 of these heals and just stack them up.
But the counterpoint to that is that once you completed a level, a lot of times near the end of the level, they give you a map that's like, here's all the places you haven't been. And so you can kind of suss out where the secrets are. But the secrets usually just had more items. So you're like, well, I don't really have any reason to go back and collect all this stuff, right?
Right. Except to make sure that you, at the end of the level, it tells you that you got all the secrets, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those secrets, even with the map, were a little difficult to find because the switches to get to them were in very just strange places.
Yeah.
Now, we just completed episode 2, and we fought not one, but 2 Maulotaurs. And Alamaxia, are you familiar with how they attack?
Those Maulotaurs are beefy. What I saw is they had a few main attacks. The one that got me the most was an overhead chop that sent this wave of fire at me. And what I found is if that hits me, I'm dead.
And it also makes your screen completely red. Yeah. So even if you aren't dead, you'll get hit by the follow-up.
The game makes sure you are aware that you got hit, and you got hit hard. And they also have another one where they launch 5 fireballs in kind of like a cone pattern. They travel very fast, and if you are on the same ground level as them, they will charge at you.
Oh, yeah.
That hurts pretty bad, too.
Yeah, they need to be pretty close to you. Not super close, but mid-range-ish, and then they'll start charging. So sometimes I would get one that would be determined to charge me, but he would be out of range, and I would just kind of keep tapping back, and he wouldn't do anything except walk towards me like, I'm going to charge you. I'm going to charge you.
We'll leave it to Lobos to exploit their behavior. So, there's nothing special about that fight. It's actually kind of cool because it almost looks like a big Stonehenge area, and you get the sense that these Maulotaurs were summoned through portals to attack you. But really, it's just they're damage sponges, and so you just sit there and you kill them. And if you have enough space, those Maulotaurs are pretty easy to really take on.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot that they can do to close the gap other than those charges.
One thing I did really like about that last level, and in episode 2 was it was almost like this big Coliseum battle. You started out and you were just getting swarmed from all sides, just a ton of imps, and then these golems would come in. Then from around the corner you get the flying mystic boys that shoot the purple orbs, and everything is coming at you from all angles. You literally have to fight every mob you've had to fight in the game up to this point like 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Maulotaurs.
Yeah. And then speaking of getting swarmed, after that you start the next episode. And something we haven't mentioned yet is that when you move episode to episode, you basically start from scratch.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is called the Dome of Despiral, whatever the one of the wizards' name is, one of the serpent riders' name, and it's really difficult. And so the first 2 episodes, I was doing pretty well. I was like, you know what, I might actually bump up the difficulty because I feel like I'm kind of tearing through this, and I'm really glad I didn't because they throw a ton of enemies at you, and this almost started to become like a survival horror thing where it's like I've got like 5 bullets here, and there's enemies that are just chasing after me.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to like run from ammo pickup to ammo pickup to just get stuff to kill the dudes. And meanwhile, I'm just aggroing more enemies, and more of them are coming and attacking. And so I think the first 2 levels from here on out for each of the episodes is really just a effort in survival. Just get to the end of the level, get all of the weapons. And once you've collected all the weapons, then you can swap between the ammos and kind of make sure that you're not running out of ammo.
Yeah, and Doom, the original Doom did that as well. Like you would start to get further, and by the end of the episode, you had all these awesome weapons, and like you had saved up all this ammo, and then you finally kill like the end boss or whatever of that episode, and then the next one you start from scratch, and you're like, oh my gosh! But they start the difficulty like still continues, so they're like, here's all these later game enemies, and now all you have is your mystic wand, and you're like, what the heck?
Yep.
But the fact that you get like your character speed, especially if you sprint, is super fast, which Doom as well. But it's nice because you can absolutely, as long as you have somewhere to go, get away and outrun any of the enemies. So if you're out of ammo, you can just like frantically run past everything and find more weapons or ammo or whatever. And that's definitely what I did.
Yeah, I had to do that quite a bit as well. Let's go back to the weapons because there's some other weapons we have that are fun to talk about. So one that we have right now is called the Claw Orb. Is that right?
It's the Dragon Claw.
Claw, yeah. And this is essentially a plasma rifle for Doom. And I hate to use analogies, but it is on point with exactly that. It's like it fires lots of little blue balls at the enemy. And that was actually a great weapon as well. Did you guys like the that orb?
I did like it. One difference though is that it does do an instant shot, just like the Mystic Wand. So there's no projectile travel time. But there is another weapon that is more like the plasma rifle though, because it does have projectiles, even though it's not blue. But
you're talking about the rune thing, right?
The staff, I think. Yeah, the staff that uses the runes. It's a hell staff, I think, or hell.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Something like that.
Staff. The thing I didn't really like about the Dragon Claw, while it was a great weapon, if I was in a fight where I had to really watch what an enemy was doing, like one of those it was Iron Skulls or Iron Liches, whatever we called them, the flash was so bright I couldn't see see their tail. I couldn't see, he's spinning around, he's gonna do
it's like you got like epilepsy while you're trying to fire here.
Oh my gosh.
And so another one is the Phoenix Rod, which is really just a rocket launcher.
It's a rocket launcher, yeah.
And then here's something that's cool. I don't know if you guys noticed. When you go to the options screen, it shows you all the weapons. It's like for the staff, you hit the 1 button. For the whatever, you hit the 2 button. For the rocket launcher, you hit the 6 button or whatever. But there's actually one weapon that it doesn't actually say. And so I had collected all the weapons. I thought all the weapons. And then we get to episode 3, and I get a brand new one that was not mentioned on the key binding screen. I was like, "Oh, that's amazing!" That one is the it's like it shoots like little balls.
Yeah, the fire mace.
Yeah. So it shoots. It honestly shoots like little cannonballs out. I don't know how to describe it. Like
they are kind of like little cannonballs. If you miss an enemy, they'll even bounce around a little bit. So
they roll around on the ground and then blow up. Yeah, it was a cool weapon though. Like I guess it was their take on a dark fantasy grenade launcher or something.
Except for they wouldn't blow up and hurt you.
Right. And it was also like very rapid fire. And
yes,
I always had so much ammo, so I'd just unload into a boss or whatever.
Now, did you guys have a sense that the different weapons almost had damage types? Like, I felt like the golems would die to the crossbow way easier than they would to another weapon, but some other guys would just be the opposite way.
That's interesting, because I actually thought the golems died to the claw very quickly.
Interesting. I didn't actually perceive any damage types, but I did notice that like it seems like they updated enemies later on, because like the golem guys at first, at least in my experience, were just kind of walking and they would melee you, and then later on they got this attack where they would shoot a ranged homing skull that would yell and go nah, nah.
And they would also then turn invisible.
Oh,
so some of them would turn invisible. Actually, there's a couple enemies. We just fought this, like, I'm gonna call it a revenant, because that's kind of what it looks like from Doom.
Right.
But yeah, those will also turn invisible. So there's a couple enemies that they have variants on them that will turn invisible.
Right.
And I think they're in the same way, like the pig guys in Doom.
They have Pinky and the Spectre is the invisible version.
Yes, yeah. So they seem to be an upgraded version of that. So.
On that note, well, I guess on a completely different note, rather, we should address the audio in the game, because it's like a Doom game where if you're adjacent to like a room where there's enemies, you'll hear like their growls or whatever. But especially like one enemy type, which is basically this floating warlock dude. If they're in the room next to you, you just hear this creepy whispering the whole time, like. And I was playing it.
Also, some of the audio doesn't actually come from the enemies. They will just randomly insert creepy sounds that sound like their enemies around. I don't know if you saw that as well.
I didn't notice that, actually. I guess most of the time I had enemies around. That's the reason.
Yeah.
But
I spent a lot of time, especially episodes 4 and 5. I got stuck a lot, and I knew there were no enemies nearby, and you'd still hear those noises.
Oh, that's cool.
Those race, what they were saying, they had two different phrases that they would play, and it was just something that was recorded, played backwards.
Oh yeah. Backwards.
Do you
speech,
like to put on a Pink Floyd album and listen to them talk
backwards, sync it up with Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
But no, they would say destroy the heretic or succumb to us, heretic.
Wow.
Interesting. Good points of trivia there.
Yeah.
So I want to just finish up the weapon discussion here, because I think the weapons, honestly, were my favorite thing in this game, and the way that you can modify them with the Tomb of Power. We just discussed it a little bit earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning a couple more really impressive modifications to weapons. So with the Phoenix Rod, which is basically a rocket launcher, it turns into a flamethrower.
Oh yeah, that was cool, but it didn't seem very good. I didn't use it.
It's terrible.
It didn't do much damage. It didn't do like any damage. Like I was shooting like the regular kind of like scythe lizard style dudes, and they took forever to kill. And I would just pull out my crossbow, and they die in like 2 minutes.
I think that the thing that made it worthless for me is that it seems like they tried to put some sort of simulated or pretend physics on the flamethrower. So as you were circle strafing, the fire arc would go off to like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
So if you think about circle strafing an enemy, you're trying to keep the middle of your screen on the enemy, and your fire is going off like completely on the right side. So what you have to do is like look to the one side or the other of the enemy, so they're almost off screen, and then fire at it to hit with your arc. It's like, this is a terrible experience.
But if you could just sit there and hold it on an enemy without it leaving, then it would just basically stun lock them. I was able to get a Minotaur's health almost half down, and he wasn't able to move because I just held it on him. And another thing I liked is that you could do a lot of damage with just one ammo. If you just held down that button, you would have that flame going out there for like 5-6 seconds before you had to use another ammo.
And one of the items that will allow you to do that is a ring of invulnerability. And so you just pop that, and then it's really cool because it changes your screen to be all gold, basically. All the colors, instead of being colored, are just gold. And so you can just sit there and stand in front of the Minotaur and attack him. One last weapon I wanted to talk about, or weapon transformation I wanted to talk about, because it was my favorite, which was what did we say? It was the Wizard's Rod, or the one that has
Hellstaff.
runes? The Hell Staff. That's the one that shoots like a plasma cannon that Lobos was talking about.
Yep.
When you hit something, it creates like a rain.
Oh yeah,
of
hell.
I don't know.
it's like rain of fire, but it's
Yeah.
this red energy that the projectile normally is. Yeah, it's
And
really
that's
cool.
great. That's great when you can go into a very small room with a bunch of dudes
Yeah.
and you're just like you just rain the fire down and it sits there for a good 5-10 seconds. And you just close the door and walk away and you're like, I'll come back to pick up the loot at the end. So.
I'm wondering now, did you guys figure out what all the items that do?
I did.
Okay,
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, I figured out most of them, but there were one or two. So
Okay,
just-
what? Yeah.
Well, so the
Which ones?
basics, there's like the quartz flask that just gives you health. There
Yes.
was like one of the if you pick up the shield, I think it gives you armor, right?
Yeah, well, there's two
two
shields.
shields, yeah.
There's like a small silver shield that's 100, and then there's like a big ornate like triangle shield,
Mm-hmm.
and that will give you 200 armor.
Okay. There was the dark tome that empowers your weapons.
Tomb of Power. Yep.
Yep. The one that I couldn't figure out was the ovum.
Oh, you didn't use that?
I used
that was
it,
fun.
and
No.
it shoots projectiles, and
Yes.
I hit multiple enemy types.
Oh,
But it
they're
didn't
not,
do
okay.
anything.
Okay, well, we do have them. Let's see if you. I don't want to spoil it. Let's see
Uh-oh.
if you can catch it on the video. Here,
Okay.
though. Okay.
It's fun.
It'll eventually come up, and it's a small little segment. So if we miss it, we'll come back to it. Any other items that you weren't sure on?
I think the rest of them I did figure out.
Okay. For me, the one that took me the longest was the urn or the ashes. What was it? The
Mystic
urn of
Urn.
ashes. Mystic urn. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Did you
maybe
guys figure out
maybe I
that
didn't
was?
figure that one out.
Yeah, that one I didn't know what it was because I kept trying to use it when I was full health. It actually gives you full health,
Okay.
so that's great. That was a great item. When I realized that,
Was
I was
it
like,
just
wait,
full
did I
health,
just
or
get
did it
health?
also give armor?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it
I
might
think it
give
did give
armor,
armor too.
too.
Yeah. I do remember
That's
that.
amazing.
Yep.
Okay, it is. Oh, also they had the wings of Wraith. Those were kind of cool.
Yeah, that would actually. So we're looking at this level, and this particular level, I don't know if there was a way out except the fact that they give you the wings of wrath. Is that it?
I think that's right.
Okay.
yeah.
I walked around.
So you're
clicked all the
basically
walls,
in
and that was
a-
the only way out I could find.
You're in a little water pit, and you can clearly see there's a little teleporter pad above you, maybe like three of you above you. So what was that, like 10 feet maybe?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to get up there, and you're like, well, I guess I use my wings of Wraith. And what happens is I couldn't figure out how to move up and down. The only thing I could figure out is if you run into a wall, it'll slide you up the wall.
Correct.
Did you guys figure out how to actually go down?
If it's basically like it will adjust you to whatever like the terrain you're moving into is at. So if you ran into like a ceiling part that was below you, like it would push you down.
Okay.
So you needed the geometry to actually change your levels. At least in my experience, I tried doing like looking up and moving or
If you
pressing
went
all
into
those
the
buttons.
key bindings,
Oh.
they had fly up and fly down.
Oh well, that would
I have
that
them
would
set
help
to
too.
control in space.
So we're at the end of episode 3, and we are
Big
fighting
boss.
the boss himself, and I guess this is Disparl.
Yeah.
Disparl. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Disparl and his very,
Oh.
very strange looking mount.
It's like a... You know, it looks like an...
It's an emaciated
you know who it looks
rancor.
like? No. You know who it looks like? Have you guys ever seen Spawn? The movie
Oh yeah,
Spawn?
yeah, totally. I know who
like
you're talking about.
the Vindicator.
Yeah.
That it has the two horns that are pointing forward, but it's on the side of his head.
Yeah.
It really looks like that, and he's green.
For some reason,
Anyway-
it reminds me of Gremlins.
Yes, it could also looks like a gremlin. So you first you're fighting the mount and the wizards on top of it, and he's pretty easy. And you're like, well, is that it? And then it gets difficult because what happens is Disparl it gets off his mount, and now he's summoning the other. I don't know what they call it. I guess cultists.
Disciples of Disparl.
Oh,
Yes,
there you go.
Disparl is in a red robe, and the disciples are in black robes, and so you know which one to attack, but after you do a little bit of damage, he'll teleport around, so you have to keep hunting him down, and it's a fairly large arena.
Yeah.
I think, and for the boss fight, which would have been normally the conclusion of the game, I was pretty satisfied with this. I thought that this had some cool mechanics where the rest of them kind of felt just like damage sponges. This one was like, hey, I got a little bit of discovery, a little bit of shooting, a little bit of dodging. Like this, I think it was a pretty solid boss fight.
And the fact that he could spawn these, and I didn't have him spawn as many as we're seeing on the video right here. So this looks way more chaotic than what I had to deal with.
Wait, did you just like bum rush him and kill him right away, or what?
He just didn't summon them for the longest time. He kept teleporting away. And I think I found whenever I was using the Tome of Power and I tried to use the Hell Staff to rain fire on him, the moment it would hit him, he would immediately teleport away.
Okay.
So
because we just saw
there was
that,
an extra level of AI with him where he's like, okay, I know what you're going to do. I know what your big attacks are, so I'm going to get out of the way of him.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, because we just saw that. I did that twice and he teleported right away. So I assume if you were doing that immediately, you would not have seen the chaos that's going on right now. But when you kill him, you got a nice little fanfare here. He kind of like, he raises up, he kind of falls over and then raises up, and there's electricity protruding around him and sort of elevating him. And then he just turns into a big corpse or like pile of bones.
Yeah.
And again, we get to the end of the level, and this is just a long page of text. Here's what's really weird, though. They don't capitalize the first letter of their sentences, and that really bugged me.
I don't think they have any capitals at all in their thing.
Maybe the font doesn't have it, but I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why aren't you guys capitalizing it? Is that something that the Heretic talks? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, man.
Or maybe it's just a file size saving. Don't have to save a capital character.
Sure, we'll go with that. You know. I'll go with that. All right, so I know you guys didn't get a chance to play episodes 4 and 5. I did, and I think that episodes 1, 2, and 3 was probably a good place to stop. So I have some serious issues with the episode 4 and 5, and I just got really lost a lot of the times. And I know that at Lobos, you were kind of commenting in the Discord channel. You're like, hey, I got stuck on this level. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was, here's a secret room you have to open up. And when I say secret room, it's like a false wall. You know, you're clicking on the stone and it opens up. And you're like, well, that's the thing I needed? That's dumb. Because you typically associate those secrets with just like bonus stuff. It's not just you need this to progress. So... Mm-hmm. There was a lot of those, but I think what I ran into more in episodes 4 and 5, and actually, so let's just watch this video a little bit, because you start out and it's just immediately like 6 imps just charging you, and I'm like, I'm out of ammo. I have nothing. What do I do? And this is the first 10 seconds of the level, so it's really rough. But a lot of times, what would happen is you would need to get a key card. You know, like Doom, you would have to pick up the yellow, green, and blue key cards in general to progress. Mm-hmm. And so you'd look at all the area and you're like, okay, well, I need a blue key card to finish the level, but I don't know where to get it. And I feel like I've explored everything. But often there would be like one tiny switch that you either have hit and you didn't realize what it opened because it opens up something on a completely different side of the level, or you missed it because it was like part of a wall that, you know, you didn't actually look behind. And more of the levels here are designed around that, to the point where I was just I was like, I'm done, you know, we'll finish this for the sake of completeness, but I'm kind of done with Heretic. They didn't really add anything more to make it a great experience. But I will say that I think if you put yourself back into 1994 or maybe 95 is when the actual box copies came out, I could see people being fine with just more. Oh, did you see that, Lobos?
Yeah, I did. And
okay,
see,
so I just use.
Well, that's what I figured it would do.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Some sort of make an enemy easier. But I tried it on an easy enemy and a boss enemy, and it didn't do anything when I hit him with it. So I don't know.
So the ovum is like this oval. It looks like an egg, and you shoot it, and if it hits enemies and they're weak enough, it'll actually just turn them into chickens.
Oh, so they have to be weakened?
I think they have to be either weak enough or you have to do some damage to them.
Interesting.
But the chickens will still attack you.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, just going back to what I was talking about earlier is I do feel like back in 94, 95, it was cool enough to just have more levels, right? Like people would buy an expansion. It's like, hey, more levels and they're harder and there's not really any new weapons or enemy types, but there's more levels. So I think for its time, it was probably fine. It just, I felt it did kind of wear on me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Doom had a ton of extra WAD maps that came out that were just more levels, and especially back then, you had far less games to choose from, and as a kid too, like your parents would buy you maybe one game or something. So the longer you could spend on a level exploring and killing things, like it added value in a sense there. That's at least what I think a lot of the development goals were. But yeah, I mean, if it was that back in the day, like I would be happy to have 2 more episodes of Heretic, even if they were terrible. Not terrible, but
the thing is
painful.
They were painful. They were larger, and I think that the average level in the first 3 episodes took me about 15 to 20 minutes. The average level of episode 3 and 4 maybe took me 30 to 40 minutes, with one of the last levels taking probably an hour because I just ran around over and over and over.
Yeah.
Just where do I go? And I don't know, when I'm playing these retro games for the podcast, I really want to keep the experience as pure as possible. And so what I didn't want to do is look it up online. I want to be like, hey, let me walk through this as someone that didn't have the internet and just understand the pains of running around over and over and over.
Yeah.
So here's a level that's really interesting because I'm trying to get. By the way, the episode here is called the Ossuary. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, ossuary. I think.
Yeah, and this level is pretty interesting because what they do is they have the center portion of the level, and you have to keep going in between the center portion over and over and over, because what you'll do is you'll move to one area of the level and you'll flip a switch, and then you have to run back, and then it opens up a thing, and that happens 3 or 4 times. In this center area is a ceiling that will start coming down if you walk under the platform. So it's one of these things where it's as you use different safe routes, that safe route now starts having the ceiling that will come up and down. And so that was interesting.
That's
it's
cool.
well, do I want to risk going through an unsafe route and damaging myself, or do I want to use the safe route knowing that when I come back, it's going to be that much more difficult to get out of here unscathed?
Yep. That's awesome.
Now,
here's another area.
Other traps that are in the game.
Yeah, well, actually, let me talk about this real quick, and then we talk about traps. Here's another area that was really confusing because you get to this hallway, and there's these stained glass windows, and they're just sitting there, and for some reason, I just decided to shoot them, and they raised up. And so that's the idea. I guess you're supposed to shoot these, but nowhere else in the game does shooting stained glass do anything, as far as I know. So I think this was just one of those where they're like, well, I don't know, experiment, have fun. All right, so let's talk about traps, Alamaxia.
Yeah, so traps, one of the first traps you actually encounter in the game, I just called them the squishers. It's you can see them just big red blocks from the ceiling, and if you get under them, suddenly the ceiling will just come crashing down on top of you, and if you don't move quick enough, it'll squish you down in the ground and do a lot of quick damage over time. And another trap would be you hit a switch, and suddenly all the walls around you drop, and you're surrounded by enemies.
Yeah, monster closets, right? There's a lot of monster closets in this game.
Absolutely.
They do that a ton, and often it's accompanied with a dark room, and then you flip the switch, and then the lights come on.
Yeah. Or
and
the other
enemies
way
come
around,
out.
right?
Or the other way around, yeah.
There's an
Which,
item
if
in the
they switched
middle.
off,
Yeah.
if they switched off, you had the torch item that you could use
That's
to
right.
turn the lights back on.
Yep.
Well, and I don't remember it, but I don't think Doom had any sort of dynamic lighting, right? I think this was the first one that I can think of.
No,
that
it definitely
this.
had dark. Yeah, it had like dark areas like this. Dude.
Right, it had dark areas, but those were all baked in, right? This one has like flickering lights. And...
It had flickering for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that would affect the environment.
Like we're seeing here, like it would go from dark to
Okay. Yeah, I thought that this was something novel. Then I guess it wasn't all that novel for this game.
Well, I felt like in this game there were like 3 different levels of light. You had bright light, dim light, and then just darkness. And the dim light I found to be really hard to play in like Act 3, Episode 3, because all the enemies were brown and a lot of the terrain was brown. So everything just, all the pixels blend together.
Yeah, there were a couple of spots like that where I was like, oh, good. There's the kind of like hulking brown demons that throw fireballs at you, and the walls are brown and the ground is brown, and I don't see anything.
Yeah.
Wow, this room looks fun. There's like
so this room is, we open it up and there is about 8 skulls in a pretty small arena, and they're all shooting whirlwinds at me, and I'm just like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm gonna pop my ring of invisibility and just face tank everything. And even then, you can see it's not easy to kill him because I keep getting my vision spun around and my character thrown up in the air. But basically, what I do is I just run under their face and hit them with rocket launchers over and over and over. And once you complete that, you move on to the next level. Hurrah!
That's quite a way to end.
Oh, that was actually the end.
That's a way to end an episode. Wow.
Yeah.
First episode, they're like, oh, here's one. Now let's throw 8 at you. See how you do.
Now, what was also interesting is, you remember we talked about episodes 1 through 3, when you completed a mission, it would go to an overmap and show you where you were. This one doesn't do that. It just says entering, and it would say the next area. So it did feel a little lower in the production, but I don't understand why, because you wouldn't think that having an art asset of a new screen would be that difficult.
Well, I did notice that in the text at the end there, it was saying how you thought that the portal after Disparol would take you home, but instead it took you to his realm. So I wonder if that was supposed to be something that the player didn't know until the end there, and you were like, oh, and kind of figured that out.
Okay, I'll
maybe
buy into that.
Maybe
no metagaming.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys...
here's a cool little... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if you guys encountered any of them. There were some walls that were there but weren't, right? And you can walk straight through them.
Yes.
And at one point, there were some enemies that were behind one of these entrances that was shooting at me. So there was like a window is what it was. But the window was covered... if you're looking at it from the outside, but when you go on the inside of this inner area, then it wasn't covered. So I was like,
I was wondering about that, because I was like, all right, is this a secret room that I can go in? No. I'm like, well, is this just a bug? What's going on here?
So there is an entrance, but it's like it's down the wall a bit, and it's just like a wall that you can walk through, and you don't have to like open it or anything. And I found that out by accident, and then you can find those enemies and see where they were shooting you from, but.
There's a handful of those that I found in the game where there would be just enemies behind that secret wall. And there was one where that secret was like a lot higher than I could feasibly reach. And I was just like, I just got this. It was a golem. It was one of the fire golems that shoot the screaming, flaming skulls. Yeah. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? I could not find it.
That's great.
Yeah, very interesting. We are approaching the end of the game here. This was the level, I don't remember what it was called. Actually, let me see if I can figure out what level this was, because this was the one I spent so much time trying to figure out. I was on episode 5, and this one is called, let's see. I don't know what it is.
Maybe a courtyard, because I mean these are very...
Might have been, or I think it might have been the courtyard. It's kind of like this castle, that you're trying to navigate, and it's one of these where, in order to progress, you have to. There's a lot of back and forth in that. There's like switches, and those switches will then or lower an area that is completely non-intuitive. And so I just spent so much time randomly stumbling upon like, oh, I can go into this area now. And
yeah,
some of the
looking
things
at this level really reminds me of one from episode 1 where it was like you're just inside castle walls in like this little town of little houses, and a switch would open up a door in a house across the map, and I'm like,
that's exactly what's going on here. And on top of that, they had these. So one of the things you can do, I don't know how you guys ran, but in order for the way I had it set up to run is I was using the WASD, and that does like a jog. But if you want to sprint, then you would move your mouse forward, which is a really weird way to move. So you're like holding down the W key to move forward, but then you're also moving your mouse forward as well, and that gives you a little boost of speed. And you can use that to almost like jump over narrow chasms.
Yeah, little gaps, yep.
Yeah, and this the way that this level is structured is it sort of depends on your ability to navigate through like jumping over these narrow chasms. But they're one of these things where it's like you can just barely get them. If you hit it at the right angle, you can jump over it, but it's not like it doesn't look like it's an obvious gap for you to jump, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what took me so long to figure out. I'm like, oh, I can jump that? That's crazy. All right, now here's the very end. Again, this starts you off in a very, very contained area, and I didn't know what to do. I was like walking around all around. It's like, how the heck do I... It looks like a little Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the Spider-Man logo, it's like a little room that looks like a Spider-Man logo. And so I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do? Well, there's in the very center of this, it looks like a fork. I don't know what you call that. And if you use the wings of the Wraith, you can slightly elevate above it, and that's what triggers the walls to go down. But I'm like, are you what? Who would think to try to use the wings of Wraith? Because you can't jump on it. Well, you have to use the wings to like slightly hover over it.
Yeah, they have some ammo there, so I guess they were hoping that the player would be like, oh, cool ammo, and then trigger the thing.
Like maybe if there was like some sort of ramp or something. Anyway, the walls come down, and you face... I'm trying to count.
Like
I think it's
five
Maulotaurs. And again, like we talked about, no, I think it's 6. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
As we talked about earlier, if you have enough clearance on these, they're actually pretty easy because you can just circle strafe them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this fight is really just, trying to burn them down one at a time. And of course, the Tomb of Power is your friend here because you can create those damage showers. And as they like to clump up quite a bit, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can kind of take out like 2 or 3 of them at the same time if you circle them all up into one area there.
I do like their charge animation, if you want to call it that. It looks like they're just skating at you. They're like,
yeah, because they
don't like run or anything. They just go slide across the room.
It is a little goofy. I do like that a lot of the last episodes here are just boss battles, like big arenas. I prefer that in my first-person shooters when the last level is just, all right, cool, here's a big baddie to kill, as opposed to things that are like super complicated levels or like a complicated level and then a boss fight. It's like, just get me to the good stuff here. But this is one of these where I definitely wanted to save throughout the fight because the Minotaurs, they're not difficult. They take forever to just burn down because they have so much life.
Yeah, one misstep with these guys and you could just get caught and killed. So I was like quick saving all the time. Just that's how I play these games. Is like, all right, I got a good shot. Cool. Back around the corner, quick save, try again. It's like so save scummy.
Max, how was your experience with quick saves?
Oh, I'm the exact opposite. I lost so much progress because I'm horrible about quick saving. There was at least 3 separate times I got right to the end of the level, and the guy behind the door, like there was one that had 2 of those iron wraiths right behind the door, and they just melted me right away. And I went, well, I didn't save since the beginning of the level. Another 20 minutes. And I've been spoiled by autosaves, and I realized I gotta get better at that if I'm going to be continuing these games.
I mean, that's your one mistake. You learn it once.
Yeah, I like to consider that I'm basically playing a game about saving with some combat in between. You know, it's like, all right, I got my save. Oh, wait, there's something I got to kill. Okay, cool. Save, nice.
Yeah. Man, so this fight is still going. I think we got another 1 minute of this fight here.
They have so much health.
It starts to get to the point where I was like, am I going to have enough ammo? I start switching up my ammo, making sure that I'm spreading out my ammo usage. Because what you don't want is you to run out of all the powerful ammo, and you're like, great, now I don't have a lot of life, and I don't have a lot of ammo for my good weapons, and now I'm just having to use my fists or something.
Yeah.
So while this is going on, let's just talk quickly about favorite guns here that you guys had. For me, again, I like the Hell Staff. I think that was the coolest weapon.
I like, what is it, the Ethereal Crossbow, I think?
That's great.
That was probably my favorite. It's the first weapon you pick up outside of your main one, and it's such an upgrade that immediately I was like, oh, this is so good. And yeah, it's fun I like single shot weapons like that. Kind of like a shotgun from Doom.
Yeah. Alamaxia?
I definitely was a person that used all of the weapons. I feel almost equally. I'd use the crossbow a lot more than others because it had that nice pushback effect to it. But even the gauntlets of the Necromancer, I found places to use it, and I have a hard time picking out my favorite one. I think it'd be easier for me to pick out my least favorite, and that'd be the fire mace, because I just didn't feel that really did much damage.
You're talking about pushback. I don't know if you noticed, but the rocket launcher actually pushes you back a little bit.
Oh, it'll also push you back into the ground if you're, close enough to a wall.
Oh, did you actually get wedged into the ground?
You up. One of the things I found difficult with the Phoenix Rod, that rocket launcher, is if I was fighting a boss, I'd be like, all right, I'm circle straight from this boy, and then maybe an imp would come just flying right in front of me, and boom. Oh, all right, well, let's restart that fight now. But the Phoenix Rod, that was a lot of fun, because those Iron Wraiths, you could take them out, I think, in 5 or 6 shots. Oh. If you could land them, is insanely
I think it was
powerful.
5 in normal difficulty there. So yeah, it was very effective. Awesome. Well, that's we did complete it, and it gives you a little summary there. I'll be honest, I don't really remember what the text talked about because it wasn't all that interesting. So let's just say that you saved the world. And that's Heretic, guys.
Woo! I will say, for those who are interested in the story, just very briefly, the 4th episode is apparently about going to his realm, Disparal's realm, and then the 5th one is going to his birthplace. But then I guess he was birthed by 6 Maulotaurs, because that's the final fight. So
that was one interesting image I just got right there.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, again, that was Heretic. I hope you guys enjoyed playing the game, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to this podcast episode. We wanted to thank all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible. If you like what you hear and you want to help support the show, we do run the show entirely from the subscriptions on that Patreon. And so if you can help us out, that would be amazing. All you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Gaming Show, and you can learn more about the sort of rewards and tiers we have over there.
So lately we've been playing some games that are pretty, I'd say, demonic. A lot of first-person shooters. We had Diablo, we had Heretic, we had another first-person shooter, Duke Nukem. Now we're going to go under the sea, aren't we?
We are, with The Little Mermaid.
Under the sea. Boom, 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 boom. Wait.
No, actually not that. What other game was under the sea? Can you guys think of any?
What was it? A Flipper? Was it Flipper?
Red October.
Red October. All of those were under the sea, but we're forgetting about the original under the sea character, and that was Echo. Echo the dolphin, to be exact. So this is one that none of us have played, and I was like, you know what? I think it's time we rectify that, because you always hear about it. This is one of those games, I think if you're a Genesis kid, you've heard of Echo. Maybe you've played it, but I think most likely you haven't played it. And so this one's going to be interesting, because I was like, I don't even know what type of game it is. So let's jump in there, and we might not like it, or it might be an amazing classic that we all slept on. But I'm excited to check it out, guys, and I hope you guys are as well.
And also, it's going to be our first Genesis title that we've done on the podcast, right?
Well, not true. We did Shining Force.
Oh, oops, I didn't do that.
And Home Alone.
But that was super.
Anyway,
I'm hiding.
It's the first one Lobos will be able to
That's the first one that Lobos is playing a Genesis game for. So
yeah, we need to do more Genesis games. I love that. Well, sadly, we have reached the end credits of this episode, and we wanted to thank everyone for listening on the podcast.
And we do release the podcast monthly, so be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google, or whatever your platform of choice is, and be on the lookout for our Game of the Year 99 deliberations, where we talk about the graphics, story, music, and all of that.
Yeah, we had so much fun. I really can't wait to get that out and hear what everyone thinks about the episode there.
Yeah, can't wait to hear everybody else's opinions about, you were way wrong about that. So it'd be fun to...
Final Fantasy was wrong!
Turn off your Twitter for that day.
Right, yeah.
So if they do have any hate mail or love letters, where should they contact us, Lobos?
Yeah, you can hit us up at SaturdayMorningGamingShow@gmail.com with all of your requests or feedback or hate mail.
Or you can just follow us on Twitter at SaturdayMGaming and flame us there.
Or if you want to do this in real time, you can jump onto our Discord. We've got a link on the Discord on our Twitter page. We'd love to have you. We have a chat room every new game. If you're planning on playing one of the games alongside us, jump in there and tell us about how you did. And also, we want to give a special shout out to TechnoAxe for much of the music on this episode.
For Saturday Morning Gaming, I'm Alamaxia.
I'm Lobos.
And I'm the Fat Wizard. We'll see you in April with Echo the Dolphin.